open up that Crystal Pepsi and get comfortable. This is Dope Nostalgia.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 219 of the Dope Nostalgia podcast, and I'm your host, Naomi. This episode is going down as one of the greatest ones we've ever done, and I was starstruck. I was very overwhelmed by this one because this gentleman has written some of the greatest songs of my childhood and your childhoods. Still to this day, he's writing some of the biggest songs on the Billboard charts. So when I got the opportunity to interview this gentleman, I was so stoked. I find it very exciting when we have a chance to have a true songwriter on the show. And I think for the level of what he's achieved, this man is in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I can't express how many hits he's written, and you're about to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, here's some background information on today's special guest, Desmond Child.
Wikipedia moment.
This is coming straight from his biography, which you can check out at desmondchild.com. Grammy-winning and Emmy-nominated songwriter Desmond Child is one of music's most prolific and accomplished hitmakers. He's a film, television, theater, and music producer, recording artist, performer, and author. His credits appear on more than 80 Billboard Top 40 singles spanning 6 decades, including Livin' on a Prayer, You Give Love a Bad Name, I Was Made for Lovin' You, Dude Looks Like a Lady, How Can We Be Lovers If We Can't Be Friends, I Hate Myself for Loving You, Livin' La Vida Loca, The Cup of Life, Waking Up in Vegas, Kings and Queens, and so many more. From Aerosmith to Zedd, his genre-defining collaborations also include Kiss, Bon Jovi, Cher, Barbra Streisand, Ricky Martin, Alice Cooper, Joan Jett, Michael Bolton, Katy Perry, Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Garth Brooks, Cyndi Lauper, Christina Aguilera, Ava Max, Mickey Mouse, and Kermit the Frog. Selling over 500 million records worldwide with downloads, YouTube views, and streaming plays in the billions. Desmond Child was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2008 and serves on its board of directors, as well as the board of ASCAP. In 2018, he received ASCAP's prestigious Founders Award, celebrating 40 years as a proud member of ASCAP. In 2012, he also co-founded the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame. In 2022, he was inducted into the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame, and Livin' La Vida Loca was inducted into the National Archives of the Library of Congress for its cultural significance to America. In 2023, Livin' on a Prayer was certified to have reached 1 billion streams on Spotify. His autobiography, Livin' on a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life, is now out there. It was released on September 19th, 2023. You've got to get yourself a copy of it. And not only that, the brand new audio version of the biography is now available. You can get your copy at desmondchild.com. And make sure that you share it with everybody, because what a brilliant man. Incredible. I can't believe this even happened, to be honest with you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dope Nostalgia, Mr. Desmond Child. Well, this podcast is called Dope Nostalgia, and it's located out of Edmonton, Canada. That's where I'm at right now. So have you been to Canada very often?
Not that often, no. I went to Vancouver once to work with Bryan Adams.
No way.
Many, many years ago, maybe 25 years ago.
What were you working on?
Well, remember there was a point where Mutt Lange, who was, he was his mentor, producer, fell in love with Shania Twain. And so he shifted all his attention to Shania Twain.
Mm.
and I think he got tired of waiting around for his turn again. So I think he was testing me out to see if I would, be able to fill those shoes, which, I mean, I think we started like 15 songs, but he always wanted to, start another one and start another one. We never like finished any of those songs. And I followed him around everywhere. I went to London, worked with him in his place there. I went to Jamaica, stayed, and they had rented this house and a whole studio was happening. And, we're both Scorpios. So I thought, oh, well, that'll be easy. But it wasn't quite so easy because it's kind of like trying to fill the uh the place of somebody's, ex-husband or something, like it's like I was never gonna be as great as Mutt Lange, so and I mean Mutt Lange's a genius. So
Mm.
it's, I mean, I love his work. I mean, he's one of my main um, idols. And so I just love Bryan Adams' scratchy voice,
Mm.
which is, I love voices that sound like that. My favorite artist to work with is Bonnie Tyler, who she has that kind of like scratchy, like she sounds like she's had a lot of nights out drinking whiskey or something.
It's like grit. Yes.
And so, yeah, every time I hear um, Brian's voice, it just catches my ear, especially like, Summer of '69 and um, just um, just all those songs. They just come to life. They have so much energy.
Mhm. Yeah. And his partner, Jim Balance, before that,
Yeah,
he had a special magic with him too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I was sort of like the third husband that didn't work out.
It was worth a shot.
Yeah,
Well,
well, I mean, he's like, one of the biggest artists of all time. He really is. He's like I'm sure in Canada he's like a national monument, right?
oh, he's a treasure. Him and Celine.
Yeah, she's somebody I really want to work with. And I've been writing songs for her and
Mhm.
submitting them to her team. And I don't think they've inundated her with all these songs I've been writing for her yet. So I thought she was spectacular at the Olympics. And
Mm.
you could hear that she's there. Her voice is back. And I just, I've written really great songs for her. And so I'm just waiting.
When you sit down to write, do you generally think about who's going to sing this song, or is it always,
I'm usually writing with the person that's going to sing it
yeah?
because I learned early that pitching songs is almost impossible.
Hmm.
There are few artists that will sing outside material. Celine is one of them. And so, that's why she's perfect for me. I've also been working with Barbara Streisand, and she's written, I mean, she won an Oscar for writing Evergreen, but she's not someone who really likes to, sit down and write songs. So she's singing the songs of the top songwriters of her time, and her time has been a very long time. You know, I mean, she got signed to Columbia Records in 1962. So that's like 60 years of making music at Columbia Records, stayed with the same label the whole time. Isn't that extraordinary?
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so I wrote a song for her last studio album, which I produced with her, called Lady Liberty. And it's one of the, I solely wrote it, and one of the few songs I've solely written actually because my business is to collaborate.
Mhm.
But I decided to, buckle down and write her this very special song. And she sang like timelessly. I mean, she sounded like she was young and like her voice was clear as a bell and just so great, so majestic. When I first met her, I told her, "You invented a genre of music. The only problem is that you're the only one in it."
Mm.
She got a
It's a,
good laugh out of that.
it's a good problem to have. Legendary.
Yeah. So, I've been working on a Broadway show now for 17 years. And it's the true story of my family before and after the Cuban Revolution. And it's called Cuba Libre. And, we've had many workshops and, I think we're up to our seventh director. And, but we're still rolling forward and it just gets better and better. I just want to live to get to opening night, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of it is, a lot of, like in a lot of it is, my life story. Um, but in this particular case, it's the story of my mother's two beautiful sisters who
Oh,
were the it girls of Havana. I was like a little kid then, but it was 1958 into the early 60s, when the Cuban Revolution happened.
mm.
And so one sister had been the mistress of Batista, the former dictator, and then the other one became one of Castro's, lovers. He had many. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
but it's, two sisters, two dictators, one island. You do the math. Mucho
Wow.
problemas. Mucho problema.
That's incredible. I mean, and also I read that you're half Hungarian, correct? And you didn't learn about that until later in life?
Yeah, I didn't find out who my real father was till I turned 18 when he
Hmm.
came to find me and kind of took me under his wing because I hadn't finished high school. I had run away. I was up in Woodstock, New York. I was, hanging
Yeah.
out. This isn't 1971, right?
Yeah.
And it was very wonderful to be reunited with him. Not reunited, I was never united, but to get to know him and see how many things about me were so much like him. Just that's DNA for you, right?
Hmm.
But I think my mother was kind of a bohemian flower child, poet, songwriter, and he was a kind of very determined businessman. And so I think I have both of those sides, and that's why I think I've been successful because I'm not just writing songs, and just like hoping for the best. I drive it home, till I make sure it's on the record, stays on the record, and writing songs in a competitive way to make sure that the artist I'm working with is successful and comes back for a second round of songwriting.
Yeah,
Because if you're not delivering, they don't come back.
of
So,
course.
I'm competing with all the other co-writers and producers that they're working with.
Hmm.
So it's kind of fun. Sometimes we all kind of can, cross-pollinate and work with each other. Sometimes it's, very different camps,
Hmm.
such as when I worked with Kiss. Um, Paul Stanley discovered me when I was in my group Desmond Child and Rouge in 1970. What was it? 1970?
Four?
No, 1978.
Okay.
And he came to, we had a record deal already with Capitol Records, and we were working on that first album. And he came to see us at a little club called Trax, Trax, that was
Mhm.
on West 72nd Street between Columbus and Broadway. And it was literally underground. You had to go down a long staircase underground. And it was very chic, it was very, modern and cool and had a very small stage. Didn't have a backstage, just kind of had a curtain and we were like getting dressed behind the curtain, and all of a sudden this guy sticks his head in around the curtain and says, "Hey, I'm Paul Stanley of Kiss." It's like we looked at him and like, we didn't know. I mean, could be a poser, kind of
Yeah.
stolen identity, because they always wore like scarves and things, and no one was allowed to see their actual real faces. That was kind of like their gimmick, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, "I just want to let you guys know that George Harrison of the Beatles is sitting at the front table." And I almost fainted. And so then, sure enough, I mean, we gave it all we had, that night. And George was like smiling the whole time, looking at us. I mean, he was like right there. So now I'm singing for one of the Beatles. How cool is that? And then Paul came to see us, right after the show. He came over and said, "You guys killed it. Um, how about you and I try writing a song together?" I said, "Okay, well, why don't you write a song with me? Because we still didn't have all the material for our album, and then I'll write a song with you for your group." And he looked at me like, "You don't know Gene Simmons." Like, that's never gonna fly. But still, he kept his end of the bargain and invited me to come to SIR, which is the rehearsal studio in Midtown, during their lunch break. So I get there right at 1 o'clock, and I'm walking in while the other guys are kind of walking past me, kind of like, their big, leather spiky, jackets, like, poking me as I'm kind of trying to get past them. And then Paul was waiting for me in this room where they had been, set up rehearsing. And there was this big 9-foot grand piano with a canvas cover on it, big black canvas cover. And there was no use for that piano for them, because they weren't a keyboard group, right?
Hmm.
They weren't a keyboard group. So um, I don't even play one note on guitar. So he helped me pull the cover back, and we sat next to each other. And I started playing a little bit of something I had started that went like, "Tonight I will give it all to you in the darkness. That's what I'm gonna do." Something like that, right? And it had this kind of rising, kind of triumphant feeling, da-da, da-da-da-da-da, you know. And so then we wrote, that verse and all, and then he took it to the studio and worked with it with Vinny Poncia, his producer, and they kind of came up with this part that was like the real hook, which was the chorus, which was like Motown. It had a Motown feel. "I was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me." And that was kind of based on the last line, "I was made for you, and girl, you were made,"
Right.
uh, that part. So then they continued, "I was made," So, I mean, think about it, the Motown influence, "Standing in the shadow of love," it really had that like four on the floor dance feel.
Hmm.
And it really became revolutionary because it was the first hard rock song to use a dance beat and to be played in dance clubs. And
Yeah.
so that it became a smash all over the world. And to this day, it's their biggest selling single. But Gene Simmons hated the song,
Hmm.
thought, they were like betraying their rock, you know, integrity and all this kind of stuff. But the song was so infectious, they couldn't not put it on their record. And it was their first single. And, it was like, went top 5 everywhere in the world. I was number 1 in Australia. And so that song is like the gift that keeps on giving, because I mean, recently it was used in a movie called The Fall Guy with,
Yes.
yeah. And so they used it all the way through. And it was like all these different, there was orchestral, there was this, kind of modern British singer that sang it sort of in the middle when it got a little bit spooky. And
Oh,
you know, I was surprised because in the trailer of The Fall Guy, they used a song that I had co-written with John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora called "You Give Love a Bad Name."
oh, I've heard that.
So in the trailer, it was like, "You give love a bad name," and
Yes.
shot through the heart. But it wasn't like continuous. It was like sound effects and stuff. And I went, "Oh my God, is that going to be in the movie?" But it turned out it wasn't. It was just in the trailer. And then they used "I Was Made for Loving You" in the movie.
That's what drew me to the movie was hearing the trailer because Bon Jovi is
Right.
one of my favorite bands on earth. So automatically, yes,
So,
attention grabbing.
so one of the things that I've noticed over the last few years since, after the Music Modernization Act, where when our rates were kind of lifted a little bit, for streaming, and also the depth of Spotify in a car, your toothbrush has it. All the ways that music is disseminated, distributed, has been growing. And for some reason, a lot of my songs have become classics on Spotify. In fact, right now I have 4 songs that have reached 1 billion and beyond 1 billion. "You Give Love a Bad Name," "Living on a Prayer,"
Mhm.
"I Was Made for Loving You," and surprisingly, "Kings and Queens" by Ava Max, which
I
was
was going to ask you about Kings and Queens because I hear it a lot where people it's got that signature sound and that tension in it, and that I was like, this was probably a Desmond Child song when I heard it.
yeah. So, it's sort of like, you know, um, a great thing that people are drawn to my music even after all this time. And I think that's because in other genres that are very popular, people started writing very linear songs because they put up a groove or a beat, then they layer hooks to it.
Mm.
But when we were writing those songs, it was just a guitar and or a keyboard and a pad of paper. And so we were able to do whatever we wanted. If we wanted to change keys, we could easily just change the key. If we wanted to slow the song down and then speed it back up, we could do all these things. But you can't do that when you're singing to a drum machine.
Yeah.
So music became, because of the influence of urban music, which, all they needed was a beat because it was a lot of, rapping and stuff all over that. And then people started layering hooks on top of that. And there was going back and forth. So because of the influence of urban music, um, music started becoming much more linear
Mm.
and not changing keys and not moving chords around. It was like between 2 or 3 chords. And so I think maybe sometimes people get worn out by that. They want songs that have lifts that go into different keys because I always felt that when you put lifts into music, it makes you feel hopeful.
Mhm.
And and so a lot of my songs are, a song like "Living on a Prayer" has become a symbol of hope for people all over the world. I mean, during the pandemic, Chicago citizens decided at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone was going to open their windows and start singing "Living on a Prayer." And the whole city was singing "Living on a Prayer." Isn't that
Wow.
cool? And
Yes.
we once got a letter from a guy that said he was planning on killing himself. His life didn't work out. So he, drives up to the bridge, jumps out of the car, leaves the car door open, windows open, and, radio blasting. And he goes to like lean over to jump off. And "Living on a Prayer" came on the radio, and that was his favorite song. So he said, "Oh, well, that's a sign. So let that be the last song I hear." So he went back to the car, and by the time the modulation happened, he drove home.
Wow.
So Bon Jovi saves lives.
He
Recently,
should.
I don't know if you saw the art the news article where
Yep.
John was on a bridge in Nashville shooting a video, and this girl was getting ready to throw herself off, and he saw her, and he came, very gently, very slowly walking towards her, and he didn't get too close, and he just leaned over and he gave her that billion-dollar smile, and she wanted to live again. And he
I saw
he
that. Yes.
he helped her to, so certified Bon Jovi saves lives.
100%.
Mhm.
Yes. Oh, and he's so helpful in his community and like helping people get meals, get housing. So yeah, he's done some really beautiful things for his community.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just his community where he lives, but
Mhm.
around, after Katrina, they built like a whole like street of homes together with um you know what is that Shelter for Humanity? I forgot the name of the group.
Habitat. Yeah.
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
And he's a very compassionate person, and he thinks big, and he knows how to fix things in a big way.
Mhm.
So he's my idol.
And of course, you've had the pleasure of working with Bon Jovi many, many, many times. Do you think
Oh,
that he's the
one
artist you
more
worked with the
thing.
most?
Maybe. I mean, we have about 20, 25 songs we've written through the years together.
Yeah.
Um, but he's also one of the godfathers to our twin sons, Roman and Nero. Um,
Ah.
and so, you know, there's a whole movie about it called TWO, the story of Roman and Nero, Nyro, because Nero's named after the singer and composer Laura Nero, who was one of my biggest influences. And I remember one day when he was little, he says, "Why'd you have to name me after a lesbian folk singer?" And I said, "Because Dylan was taken." You know how many kids are named Dylan?
How old are the twins now?
They're 22 years old. They just graduated from NYU, and they're working as paralegals in two big law firms in New York separately. And their plan is to do that for 2 years and then apply to law school and become lawyers. So we'll be very lawyered up, you know. But I'm
Uh,
I'm proud of them because I mean they grew up around artists, and they kind of saw what kind of difficult lives they live, and they saw that it's not as glamorous as it seems. Yeah, not as glamorous as it seems because, between albums, they have to struggle to reinvent themselves every time. And then they go out there and their lives aren't that great on the road. They eat bad food, they don't get enough sleep, they're like struggling to get from one city to the next. I
mm,
mean, and actors have it way bad because they could wait 3 years between roles that are significant. And
mhm.
so then, if you're a really truly great actor like Daniel Day-Lewis, you could wait many years between his epic roles. And he's
Mhm.
not just taking anything that pops up, you know.
Yeah.
He's he has so much integrity, that he, lives within his means or whatever, so that he doesn't have to go out and be on the next, mattress or pillow commercial.
Yeah. Well, you have to work hard and have a great integrity in your work to be as successful and lucky as he is at that. Being able to choose those roles, like I understand. Yeah, there's a lot that go into that.
Yeah, so my sons saw how difficult it is to live the life of an artist, even though they're both very talented. They play instruments. I mean, I made sure they played guitar, and they've had guitar lessons from Richie Sambora and Dave Stewart, and uh, you know, uh, all the great guitarists that have come through, and it's sort of like one of those things where it's like, no way were they going to live life that vulnerable,
Mhm.
so they decided, well, they become lawyers because, and I encourage them in that because someday they'll inherit our entertainment company. And so I don't want them to be fools and be taken advantage of.
Mhm.
And so I've been so lucky in my life because, I had been in this very kind of difficult mind control cult for 4 years during the time that I was in the 80s when I was writing all those very big songs.
Mhm.
I lived two lives. And then I went to Russia for the to this kind of conclave summit of songwriters, Russian songwriters and American songwriters. People on that summit were like, oh my God, it was Cyndi Lauper, it was Michael Bolton, um, Diane Warren, um, just like so many people. It was 48 of us, and there
Mhm.
were like 100 of them, and then we wrote together with them. But it broke the spell of the cult I was in because I saw a whole entire country that lived under fear of, they couldn't say certain things, they had to look a certain way, they had to talk a certain way, they couldn't even have us in their private homes. And I got snuck out and went to this little apartment, out on the outskirts of Moscow. And,
Mhm.
the curtains were all drawn and candles were lit and these beautiful people, like the food that they served were probably, like they saved an entire year, to
Mhm.
buy it, I mean, it was like they were so generous. And I said, I feel closer to these people than the people I've been living with for 4 years, in this kind of all for one for all kind of commune that I was in. So I left. It was very difficult to leave. I was very brainwashed, but I knew that I had to do it. And, very soon after that, I met my husband to be, Curtis, in New York. He was an actor. And I was walking by this restaurant. He was, the maitre d' or like sitting people, and he looked like Brad Pitt in Legends of the Fall with, that shoulder length blonde hair and the blue eyes, only better looking, you know.
Nice.
And it was like love at first sight. And so
Mhm.
it was sort of late at night, so I tried to go in, and he said, "No, sorry, we're closed." So I was like frustrated. So I came back the next night with my assistant, Michael Anthony, and we came earlier. So he seated us, and then it was still towards the end of the night. So he was having his dinner like at his table off to the side, and I told Michael Anthony, I said, "Tell him to come over and bring his food over here and eat with us." And so he did, and he came over. And then I just like sat there, and then Michael Anthony like talking, he was like, chatterbox. They were talking, and I was just looking and looking. Then the next day, I had Michael call him to ask him out on a date for me. And he said yes. So, from that first date on, it's just been an incredible life. And that was 1989. So, we've lived in LA twice, Miami, now Nashville, New York, and we have friends everywhere. And um, we decided at, midpoint to have our own children. So that's what our movie's about, called Two, the story of Roman and Nero. And Two came from a poem that John Bon Jovi wrote for them,
Yeah.
uh, for their blessing when they were 6 months old. And it's so sweet because it's on this Ritz-Carlton stationery, and we have it framed downstairs in their area.
Mhm.
And it was just like one of those things that we didn't realize how pioneering we were. The whole story of our movie, kind of starts out by meeting our surrogate mom, who was an American, and we met her in India with a Deepak Chopra conference called How to Know God. And I kept looking at her, and there was something magnetic about her. She said, "Why are you looking at me?" And I said, "Because you're going to have my kid." And she's like, "Ooh, like, get away. Don't look at me." But it turns out that she had a dream that she had our child. So then when we got back to the States, she asked to speak with us. She says, "I think I'm supposed to do this."
Mm.
And so it was just magical the whole way. But, we didn't think it was going to be two, so that's why the
Yeah.
movie is called Two. So, yeah, so it's all also in my book that I released last year called Living on a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life, which I co-wrote with my collaborator, David Ritz.
Mm.
And just last week, we released finally, a year later, the audiobook. And so I'm just like, I love the audiobook much better than the book, but it's almost like you have to have both because the book has the pictures and the audiobook has like snippets of writing sessions and things where you hear us coming up, me and Joan Jett coming up with "I Hate Myself for Loving You," like the second that we came up with it. And
That's
came,
brilliant that you included that.
yeah, waking up in Vegas. So when I co-wrote "Living La Vida Loca" with Draco Rosa, that's in there. And it's so fun, to hear the mumblings becoming like words. Then, it's like watching a universe being born.
Mm.
It's so wonderful, the creative process and the sharing of ideas back and forth and the camaraderie and the fun to, that's why, I had a kind of lonely childhood. So that's why I'm really, it doesn't inspire me to go down and sit and write a song by myself. I'd rather be in the sandbox playing with the other kids.
Yeah.
So that's why, I live a blessed life. Um, because I just I'm always being asked to try to write a song with this artist or that, a lot of them young artists, kind of. So I serve more kind of like almost like as a mentor, kind of teaching the art of songwriting like my mentors. I had been with a producer named Bob Crew who had co-written and produced all the songs for the Four Seasons. And he was, I mean, at the time he was like 51 and I was like 28.
Mm.
And it was, no, maybe I was 26. So I thought he was such an old man, and like, how could he know how anything, if anything was cool or not? Meanwhile, he wrote Lady Marmalade and he wrote Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. And he wrote Sherry. I mean, he wrote all the biggest songs that to this day you hear constantly, like evergreens. My Eyes Adored You, it's like all of these classic songs, but he taught me the art of songwriting. And I talk a lot about, what he taught me in the book. Because these are things that I also share when I do master classes. I just did one in Athens. They did a version of my book in Greek, and it was a book signing. But I was in a theater, and it was packed, full of hopeful songwriters and musicians, and to hear what I had to say, and it was just wonderful. I love sharing like that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I'm I've decided to co-write another book that's strictly on songwriting with Jody Marr. She was the producer songwriter that discovered Mika. Remember a song called Grace Kelly? She co-wrote that with,
Yeah.
and she's a professor of songwriting at Belmont University
Mm.
and in Nashville. And I've known her since Miami and since she was in a band. And, that's when I first knew her. And she's just, so great. And so because she's done all of this, you know, all these studies on the development of music since the beginning of time, we decided to collaborate. And so, I mean, it'll take us like, I mean, my autobiography took me 7 years to finish. So I don't know how long this book is going to be. But I think she said there's a real need for a real college textbook and it has to be laid out in a certain format for it to be able to use for courses on songwriting. So that we're going to try to fill that that gap that there is. I mean, you know, my book talks a lot about my songwriting process, but it also talks a lot about, you know, the people I slept with and all that too. You know, so that's not necessary for songwriting. It's good. It's good for gossip, not for songwriting.
No, but I mean, I think it's going to be very beneficial to so many writers.
How can we be lovers if we can't be friends? How can we start over when the fighting never ends, baby? How can we make love if we can't make amends? How can we be lovers if we can't be friends? Shot to the heart, and you're too late, darling. You give love a bad name. Your cruel device, your blood like ice. One look could kill my pain. Your thrill. I wanna love you, but I better not touch. I wanna hold you, but my senses tell me to stop. I wanna kiss you, but I want it too much. I wanna taste you, but your lips are venomous poison. Your poison running through my veins. Your poison. I don't wanna break these chains. Tell me what it takes to let you go. Tell me how the pain's supposed to go. Tell me how it is that you can see, even now, without thinking you lost everything that was good in your life to the toss of the last. Tell me what it takes to let you go. Yeah.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi. If you enjoy Dope Nostalgia, thank you. Consider becoming a Patreon subscriber today for as little as $1 a month. It helps keep the show on the air and rolling. So if you want to check out our Patreon, it's at patreon.com/dope nostalgia. $1 a month, and you'll be helping support one of your favorite podcasts.
Hey, everybody, I'm Rick Campanelli, and you're listening to the Dope Nostalgia Podcast.
Hey, I'm Josh Rodriguez.
And I'm Mike Zacchio.
And we are
The new pod on the block.
Every week, Mike and I will be breaking down our obsession with everything boy band culture.
From bangers to bops to fashion and everything in between.
If it's boy band related, we've got you covered.
We also want you to be a part of it. So call to our hotline and leave a voicemail for the show.
818-308-4084.
Be sure to subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave us a review.
Follow me at Mike_Zacchio.
And I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_.
And you can follow New Pod on the Block on Instagram at
New Pod on the Block. New Pod on the Block. Every week on your favorite podcast platform.
You know when it's right, you know when you feel it, baby. You hold it, you hear it, you taste it, it's right. You got the right one, baby. If it's irrepressibly lovable, unsurpassably callable, and intimately soulful. You got the right one, baby.
Times change, styles change, but I feel like the lyric and the melodies of every song are timeless, no matter what package you put around it, you know?
Yeah.
Melody.
I mean, the one that has brought melody back is Chapel Roan. I mean, her music is just so astounding. I mean, I just heard um, a duet that Kelly Clarkson did of one of her songs um, with oh my God, uh, a country artist, and they sing it in harmony, and it's so fantastic. I mean, I love Kelly Clarkson. I was her first producer
Yeah.
for American Idol, yeah, and I wrote a song for her to sing called "Before Your Love."
Mhm.
And that was the flip side of A Moment Like This. So there was like a double A side. So that was the more popular song, A Moment Like This.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping to get to work with her again. I mean, she's just an extraordinary survivor and human being. And I just, I just feel like I'm made for her. So we'll see what
Yeah,
happens. Maybe this interview will send the message out. Work with
that's right.
Desmond.
That's right, Kelly. And I went through a list of songs that you've written that's definitely that was on that list. You had done quite a few songs for American Idol artists too.
Yes, I was Carrie Underwood's first producer. I produced her first #1 song called "Inside Your Heaven."
Mhm.
And, I also worked with Jennifer Hudson, with Clay Aiken. I had, I co-wrote with Chris Braid and Andreas Carlson a song called Invisible, which
Oh,
was
it's
his
so
hit.
good.
And so, yeah, I worked with a lot of them in the early days
Mhm.
when Clive Davis was still part of the equation there.
Mhm.
And I was one of Clive's guys. So when Clive left the show, then I wasn't really brought back in to work on that show. But it was about 3 years that I did the first 3 seasons, and I loved everything about it. It was so great, and it was at the during the time that my sons were born too. So I was juggling, like because we moved to Calabasas to be, closer to the action. So I was like running home to do the bottle feeding at night. Then I'd go back to the studio and then I'd drive back again. It
Mhm.
was just like so crazy. But those were some of the most wonderful days of my life.
Imagine they would be. There's a song by, well, obviously you've worked with Aerosmith quite a bit, but one of the songs that I think was one of the best Aerosmith songs in the 90s was Hole in My Soul.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's a whole story behind that. Uh,
Good. I love that tune. Mm.
because I had gone to try to write with Rod Stewart. So I went up to his compound. He had this trailer studio like parked in front of this kind of looked like Versailles, right? And this is like look like, you know, like just a box, like a railroad car, right?
Mhm.
So I go in there and then he stays in the control room with the engineer and he puts me in a room that just had a piano, which was the recording room, right? And that, he said, okay, so go ahead, like start writing. And it's like, well, you know, I said, well, okay. Um, aren't you going to come in here and co-write it with me? No, no, this is how I do it, So I started, kind of banging when I started, there's a hole in my soul, da-na-na, a hole in my soul. And then I looked up, he was gone.
What?
Yeah, he was completely gone. And so I just like dejected, I left and then tried to pitch that song to an artist named Curtis Stigers,
He's
you
been
know.
on the show. Yes, I love him.
Yeah,
He's great.
so he was, meant to co-write with me, and my manager managed him as well, separately. And so that's how we came together. And this was, I'll never forget it, in our house in Santa Monica. And so we were in the music room and I'm saying, well, what about this? There's a hole in my soul. And he was like, I don't know. I can't sing, hole in my soul. I mean, it's like, da 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 da. And then he left. He didn't like that. He didn't like my ideas. So then I got a letter. I went to London and I got a letter in London at the hotel where I was staying from him, like a 3-page letter about how that experience was the worst experience of his life. He's never been so humiliated and and
What?
how much he hated the experience of working with me and da 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 da. Okay, I mean, I don't know why he had to put it in writing. I have the letter somewhere, but it was like dripping in hatred, right? And I was like astonished that he would take the time. And like, what did I do? Maybe I was a little, because I try to be like encouragingly, maybe pushy, but it gets people to kind of engage. But I couldn't get him happy.
Mm.
And I don't think he was happy anyway because he's really was more of a jazz artist, and he was one of Clive's artists, and he was being pushed into being more of a pop artist at the time.
Oh, okay.
Right? It was kind of like smooth, kind of, you know, jazz pop kind of thing. And I don't think he was happy with that.
Hmm.
And he felt a lot of pressure coming towards him from everywhere. So he took it out all on me. So then I go to write with Aerosmith, and I started in with, okay, well, what about this idea? There's a hole in my soul, and it's like Steven just like took off with it, it was just like it found its home, right? But isn't that funny?
It's a fantastic song. I'm
But
a big fan of the pre-chorus.
the journey of a little hook, there's a hole in my soul,
Mhm.
it's fantastic. It's like either it's like a key that opens up somebody's imagination, or it's a lock that shuts you out, so that's my story on that.
I saw a clip of Clay Aiken singing These Open Arms. And I said, hey, wait a second, that's a Bon Jovi song too.
Oh,
So
I didn't co-write that one,
I
but
thought you did.
no,
Oh,
I didn't. Uh, no, I did. Run to Me.
yeah.
Run to Me. That one I co-wrote
Hmm.
that one, and Invisible. And
Hmm.
after all these years, um, we actually have become like text friends, me
Yeah.
and Click, and a lot about politics and stuff, because he had tried, running for Congress, and
Hmm.
has a deep concern, for our country, and he's kind of he's sort of a person that's like fair-minded, and he's not from the right or the left. He's just like let's just look at the facts. Like let's stop running to to separate corners. Let's like work together. And that's why I think he would have made a really great congressperson. But in those years since he had run, he had been on The Apprentice. Remember
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
And he he also had a child, and a son who's all grown up now. And so, he you know, has lived a more quiet life. And I'm sure he's out touring and performing. He has his fans.
Mm.
Um, um, where his fans have a certain name. I forgot what their names what the name is. Like,
Well, Claykins or
I
I don't know.
don't know. I don't know
I
what
don't know.
but the ladies always, they come to see him. They have a certain name. Sorry, I can't remember it. But we've become very, close friends, through texting, and sending memes back and forth. It's a lot of fun. And
Mm.
so, that's the thing about my career. Like, it's yeah, I've worked with, huge stars like Cher, and Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, who I adore,
Mm.
and Bon Jovi, um, Joan Jett, all of the, Ricky Martin,
Mhm.
Katy Perry, all of these big stars. But it's when we go to work together, I try to help them to, get real, and you know, they pretty soon, because I'm what they call an empath. So they start telling me about their life, and I'm like, yeah, wow, tell me more. And I'm like writing down everything they're saying, like a therapist. And
Yeah.
then those become the lyrics of the song, because it's coming from them, from what they want to be singing about, from what they're going through. And it's therapeutic for them, because the process of putting your feelings down, you see it outside of yourself, and then you can move on from there. And I think that's one of the great services that I bring to my writing sessions.
Mhm. Making sure that the song still reflects their feelings and thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, y- they have to be convincing because,
Yeah.
ever since Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Laura Nyro, people started writing confessional songs.
Mm.
And so then, Carole King, all these people, James Taylor, um, you know, uh, Jackson Brown, then Bruce Springsteen, all these people were writing songs from their own experience.
Mm.
So then when people, that were professional songwriters that weren't artists, tried pitching songs, and let's say an artist recorded and they weren't a co-writer, the critics would criticize it and say,
Mm.
well, they didn't write, and you can still hear that echo, and that all came from the critics. It's like, well, did they write that song
Mm.
themselves? And that's the marker as to whether it's credible or not. But Frank Sinatra didn't have any problems singing songs he didn't write. Neither
Mhm.
did Judy Garland. Neither does Barbara Streisand.
Mm.
You know, think
Mhm.
about it. How in a way, this whole idea that the conceit is that if you're singing a song, whether it's true or not, it's you're talking about your life because it's like telling a friend what you did today,
Mhm.
or what happened last night. And that conceit, I mean, it's so different than going to see a movie because you go to see a movie, you sit in the chair and you lose yourself in the movie on the screen. That's the conceit of it, right? But we don't expect the actors to have written the script that they say or to
Exactly.
have, lit the room or to have been filming at the same time. And, but all the pressures on a recording artist that they have to sing it, they have to, um, write the song, and it has to be authentically truth that they're singing about. And, whatever happened to creative imagination, which is, my close friend Diane Warren, she rarely co-writes. And, every time she gets somebody to sing a song, it's usually lately in the last 20 years, it's been attached to a movie. So like Aerosmith sang I Don't Want to Miss a Thing that she solely wrote. And because it was for a movie and
Mm.
they didn't put it on their album, it was just a single and became one of the biggest songs of all time.
Mhm.
And, it was like one of those things where it was a cover. You know, and it was like it's so well done, and it's one of Steven Tyler's greatest vocal performances.
Yeah.
And while they were still touring, they couldn't have a show without it.
Mm.
So those are like exceptions, right? Where the artist didn't write the song, but they made it one of the biggest hits of all time. And I wish there was more of that because us working songwriters, we're not always going to be able to be in the room kind of pulling, something out of somebody. Sometimes you want to co-write with another professional songwriter and
Mhm.
come up with magic. But
Yeah.
then it's hard to get it recorded. In country music, people are more used to singing songs they didn't write. In fact, when they put out CMT, they would, always credit the songwriter written by, but you wouldn't see that on MTV or VH1. You wouldn't
Mm.
see the songwriter credit because Nashville and country music, is the songwriter is the king or
Yeah.
queen. And I guess I'm the queen. But just it's like one of those things where if this is the business part, if somebody hits big, then the publishers go after that person to represent them. So they offer them big advance money, thinking that, they're going to write another huge smash right around the corner and they'll just keep making money. But the thing is, it's that sometimes these deals are pushed by the managers and the like if you have a song, money comes in a little bit at a time, so the manager gets to commission whatever comes in on those little checks that come in. But when you get the advance, they can commission right off the top.
Mm.
what they wouldn't have gotten. So it's like getting an advance that
Yeah.
they can put in the bank and make interest on instead of waiting, dribbling the money coming in little by little. So then artists were given these big, huge advances to sign. Then they had all this pressure to write songs to be on the record, even if they weren't good.
Mm.
And so that's usually when I'm called in at the very last minute, you know, like write them a hit. It's like, well, hold on a second. It's like you have to develop things and you have to have a true relationship. But I've done it because I can do it. Come in last minute, boom, becomes the first single. And then, instead of, kind of more natural development of a creative relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But the pressure that the lawyers and the managers put and the agents and all this put on the artists is tremendous. And it's not natural to the creative process.
Exactly. Yeah, like
So a lot
I
of
can't
elements.
imagine. It's like what happens too with athletes. Like you're paid to do this job, so you must perform. I can't imagine having that kind of pressure on anybody.
Well, that's a little different because the product is what's happening on the field, like right at
Mm.
that moment.
Live.
But
Yeah.
yeah, live. So, and people get injured a lot, so, and then they can't do it.
Yeah.
But, they're also selling out those huge stadiums, where people are paying top dollar. I think my sons are going to, um, you know, a, a basketball game that they've been saving up for. And those tickets to be courtside it's like $2,000 each.
Mm.
But they're treating themselves, and they saved up their money and they're going to do it. And I'm proud of them, but still, it's like, Jesus, $2,000 a ticket. So a lot of money is made in sports.
Mm.
But in the music thing, it's a little bit different, because you have to wait so long for it to get through the system to come out. And because, there are all of these, there's radio and radio promotion and, all of these like rails that you have to succeed in for something to become a big hit,
Mm.
unless it's like a TikTok sensation. But I've heard lately that record companies, like their A&R people don't do anything but watch TikTok all day, looking for the next new talent. So if somebody pops out, like, wow, they all go running there. They're probably crashing into each other at the doorway, trying to knock on the door. And then, they'll pay $1 million to sign somebody. And then the kid, like, you know, has never left their bedroom. They
Yeah.
made all this stuff on headphones. They've never performed. They've never been on tour. They've never done anything. So, and most of them are one-hit wonders.
And are
So,
they doing original music that they wrote, or are they doing
yeah,
covers?
yeah, no, original music that they
Yeah.
wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Shawn Mendes was like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he might have done covers and whatnot, but he really, truly is talented. I mean, whoever signed him lucked out. But
Mhm.
there are a lot of kids that, dream of becoming stars because we live in a kind of American Idol world where everybody gets their 15 seconds of fame.
Mm.
Um, and everybody feels like they deserve attention. And in social media, with filters and this and that, you can look like a star and kind of
Yeah.
create yourself. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sell out, an arena. You
Mhm.
know, it doesn't mean you can tour because it's so expensive to tour.
Mhm.
And I remember going to see some Bon Jovi shows. They had 18 semi-vans out, like huge, I don't know if they're semi-vans, but huge trucks that were
Yeah.
carrying the stage, all the components and the equipment and everything to bring people a fantastic show. And, of course, they toured the world many, many times, and everyone always couldn't wait to get to see the Bon Jovi again. But that's not true of artists that didn't even play their local bar, that doesn't have the experience of singing to two drunks at the bar and getting them to like clap. Is it a connection? You know, it's like
Paying your
that,
dues, man.
paying your dues, and also the pressure on youth. It's like, it's like, how old is that person? Oh, they're what? 26? Oh, man, too old.
No,
Not going to
it's not.
sign a 26-year-old. They're like, done. It's like, well, it takes that long to even get good.
It's true.
So all of these kind of commercial factors are interlaced with then the kind of AI crashing into all of it. We're living through some pretty scary and exciting times.
Before we wrap things up, I was going to ask you about the story of Tommy and Gina
Hmm.
and how that all came to be lyrically.
Well, it's all in my book, Living on a Prayer, Songs, Big Life. And
Yes.
my audiobook is really great. It really, truly is great because there's a lot of music that's woven through. And it's also hearing, I read it. So, it took me 7 months to do it.
Mhm.
It was very hard. But the story is that after having written You Give Love a Bad Name, which is the first song I wrote with John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora, they invited me for a second round of songwriting. And John came in saying, I'd like to write a song that's like a story song about, I want to write a song that's like a story song about, a struggling couple that is trying to make ends meet. And, before I had come out as realizing I was more gay than I was bi, I lived with Maria Vidal, who was we started Desmond Child and Rouge together, my group. And I would be home writing songs. I had graduated already from NYU, and I was home writing songs all day. And she was a waitress in a place called Once Upon a Stove. And all the waiters and waitresses, they sang, at certain points, they would sing a song. And so her waitress name was Gina Velvet. So she always came home with the big tag that said Gina. So when John talked about that, I remembered, she and I were together 4 years. And, since we were in our early 20s. And, I started thinking about, and my original name is John, so I started thinking about Johnny and Gina, because that has alliteration, right?
Yeah.
And so I started presenting, the idea, and John said, listen, I can't sing Johnny because that's my name. Like everybody will think I'm singing about myself. That's really dumb. And we all just sat there and, like Johnny, Tommy, what about Tommy? And that's how Tommy and Gina were born.
Just like that. And then it became what all goes down in history.
Right.
Yeah.
As people identified with that.
Yeah. Well, I am very grateful for your stories and your inspiration and the gifts of the songs that you've given us. So I will make sure I tell everybody about the audiobook, and we will put up the links for everybody to check it out.
Yeah, and follow me on Instagram because I'm on that thing, night and day. I mean, my husband says like turn off the phone, but like I don't want to let my Instagram friends down, so I'm like answering and like questions and stuff like that. It's Desmond.child on Instagram.
Perfect. I'll tag you in the social media when this comes out as well, and we'll make sure that we get everyone listening to the audiobook because I can't wait to share it. It's gonna be great.
Thank you so much.
Social media, yeah, we've got it. Send us an email, dopenostalgiapodcast@gmail.com. Twitter, Nostalgia Dope. Or on Insta, dope_nostalgia.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work. Hey, friends. I kind of miss getting those messages on my answering machine like we used to back in the day. What I'd really love is to hear from you, the listeners of Dope Nostalgia. This is your chance to be on the show, giving feedback, telling us what you love, what you hate, and who you'd like to see more of. Call us at our new toll-free number, 1-888-741-9192. Leave us some feedback. Your message could be played on the show. So give us a call, 1-888-741-9192. Toll free.